Hi, this is Benny. I've dedicated my life to understanding the universe in hopes that someday I am given the opportunity to hop on a rocket and see it for myself. Growing up, my safe space was between the covers of a book. My friends were people like Percy Jackson, Alex Rider, Paddington Bear, Beatrice Pryor, Hermione Granger, and the Astrosaurs, a group of crime-fighting dinosaurs in space. And so, using Space Bites, this podcast, I am hoping to create the same type of safe space where knowledge is for everyone and anything is possible. Together, we can marvel at the boundless beauty of the universe and find hope within the delicate intricacies that weave the fabric of our world. If there's one thing we have in common as human beings, it is our curiosity, and a curious mind is a happy one. Together, we will learn how the gold in our rings was made inside of stars, how the flap of butterfly wings can cause an earthquake, how charged particles from the sun interact with Earth's magnetic field to paint the sky with glowing lights, and how math is the language that describes everything. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Space Bites with Benny. It's me, Benny, your favorite nerd. This episode is titled Everything You Wanted to Know About Dinosaurs, and I mean everything, from their ancient beginnings to their mind-blowing sizes, their dramatic extinction, and their modern-day descendants. We're exploring the full dinosaur legacy, so grab your time machine or just your headphones and let's travel back about 252 million years ago. But before we talk about dinosaurs, let's first talk about the world that they inherited, which was completely chaotic and had some very odd-looking creatures. So, what was Earth like before dinosaurs? Let's rewind the clock. Earth formed about 4.6 billion years ago. For the longest time, not much was happening, at least not anything that we would recognize. There were no trees, no animals, and not even fish. Just oceans and microscopic life. Bacteria ruled the planet, and that was it. But around 2.4 billion years ago, a major shift happened. Some of those tiny microbes figured out how to do photosynthesis. They started releasing oxygen, and over time, that oxygen built up in the atmosphere, making Earth a little less alien and a lot more breathable. And this is where life gets weird. Fast forward about to 600 million years ago, and we finally get multicellular life. Now think of soft, blobby, jelly-like creatures that were drifting through the sea. Nothing had bones or shells yet, but life was definitely starting to stir. Then came the Cambrian explosion, a huge burst of biodiversity, and all kinds of strange new animals appeared in the oceans. But still, everything was underwater. Life still hadn't taken the big step onto land. It wasn't until something called the Devonian period, which was about 400 million years ago, and I'm very sorry I'm going to throw so many numbers at you during this episode, but this is when plants started greening the land, and soon after, the first amphibians crawled out of the water, gasping that first breath of air. Insects appeared, forests grew, and the land was starting to feel alive. Before dinosaurs, there were giant bugs. Yep. By the time we get to the Carboniferous period, around 350 million years ago, Earth is covered in dense, swampy forests. Oxygen levels are sky high, so high in fact that insects grew gigantic. And we're talking about dragonflies with 2.5-foot wingspans and centipedes the size of dogs. It was a bug's paradise. Eventually, all the continents smashed together into a supercontinent called Pangaea, a massive landmass that stretched from one pole to the other. But things were not stable, and around 252 million years ago, a series of massive volcanic eruptions in Siberia unleashed chaos. Ash filled the skies, the oceans acidified, and temperatures soared. And just like that, over 90% of all marine life and 70% of land species were gone. And this was called the Permian Triassic Extinction Event, the worst mass extinction in Earth's history. But from this devastation came a second chance. Some survivors pulled through, including some small reptiles. They weren't dinosaurs just yet, but they were close. These were called dinosauromorphs, about the size of a house cat, agile, fast, and built for land. They weren't exactly headline material, not yet anyways. And at that time, early crocodile relatives were actually dominating. They had more species, more body types, and they seemed like the ones who'd win the evolutionary race. But then, here comes the other twist. Around 200 million years ago, as Pangaea started to break apart, volcanoes erupted again, triggering more global warming and another extinction event. And this time, the crocodiles were nearly wiped out. But the dinosaurs, they barely flinched. And with their main rivals gone, they rose fast and they rose big. From tiny house cats, ancestors to creatures the size of whales, the dinosaurs were about to take over. So this is the prequel. That's the world the dinosaurs inherited, a planet shaped by fire and flood, where survival meant being fast, adaptable, and maybe just a little bit lucky. Now, let's get into who the dinosaurs really were, what made them different, how they grew to dominate, and why their story is far from over. Now, we travel back to 252 million years ago, and we say, what is a dinosaur and how did we find them? So, to start from the basics, dinosaurs were land-dwelling reptiles from the Mesozoic era, roughly 250 to 66 million years ago. But they weren't just giant lizards. They were upright, fast-moving, and diverse animals with unique hip structures, limb postures, and in many cases, feathers. Dinosaurs fell into two major groups. One, and I really hope I'm pronouncing this properly, they're called lizard-hipped dinosaurs, which included the Tyrannosaurus rex and the long-necked sauropods. The other type are called ornithischians, or bird-hipped, which includes Triceratops, Stegosaurus, and greenhouse gases, causing intense global warming and a second mass extinction. The crocs were nearly wiped out, but the dinosaurs survived almost unscathed. From there, they exploded in size, variety, and dominance. So, when were dinosaurs alive? And we break this down into three different periods: Triassic, Jurassic, sounds familiar probably, and Cretaceous. So, the Triassic period is about 252 to 201 million years ago. What was the Earth like? It was hot, the dry desert with one continent, Pangaea. Life was still recovering, dinosaurs were small and rare. So, key dinosaurs during this time were Eoraptors and Coelophysis, and other creatures were early mammals, large amphibians, and crocodile-like predators. Then we have the Jurassic period, which was about 201 to 145 million years ago. During this time, Pangaea started to split into Laurasia and Gondwana. The climate became warm and humid. Lush forests and ferns flourished. Dinosaurs diversified and got huge. In this period, we have the Stegosaurus, the Brachiosaurus, and the Allosaurus. The first birds appeared, and flying reptiles like pterosaurs filled the skies. And lastly, we have the Cretaceous period, which was about 145 to 66 million years ago. Continents and coastlines began to resemble our modern world. Flowering plants evolved, insects like bees and butterflies appeared. Dinosaurs reached their peak, and this is when we had the Tyrannosaurus rex, and I think this is most people's favorite, the Triceratops, my personal favorite, Velociraptors, Ankylosaurus, and Spinosaurus. So now you might be wondering, what made dinosaurs so big? Argentosaurus was the largest land animal to ever live, measuring up to 40 meters long. So in case you go by the imperial system, that's over 130 feet, and it weighs up to 80 tons. That's about the weight of 55 adult hippos, or 20,000 cats. So why did dinosaurs get so big? According to paleontologist Steve Brusaid, their bird-style lungs played a major role. These lungs were connected to air sacs, allowing them to breathe more efficiently than mammals. They could take in oxygen-rich air continuously, even while exhaling, fueling their huge bodies. The ecosystem helped too, with vast forests and abundant plant life, especially during the Jurassic and Cretaceous period. Giant plant eaters had plenty to eat, and big predators had big prey to chase. Some sauropods, like Diplodocus, Brontosaurus, and Brachiosaurus, were heavier than a Boeing 737. And again, I'm very proud of myself to be able to pronounce these dinosaur names so smoothly, but I think it's very cool that they were actually heavier than the planes that we have around today. So dinosaurs didn't just dominate by size, they were actually everywhere. They lived from the poles to the equator. Some were covered in armor, like the Ankylosaurus. Others had crests, horns, or feathers. Some could run, dig, swim, glide, and even fly. Take Microraptor, for example. It was about the size of a crow with 4 feathered wings. It probably glided through forests like a flying squirrel. And again, that's Microraptor in case you wanted to look it up. By the late Cretaceous period, dinosaurs dinosaurs ruled every land ecosystem, from beaches to mountain ranges. So you might be wondering, how did dinosaurs learn to fly? Well, in fact, not all dinosaurs were colossal. In fact, flight evolved in the smallest ones, the paravians, a group of feathered theropods. As they got smaller, their feathers became larger and more useful. At first, they were probably for installation or display, but eventually they aligned along the arms and formed proto-wings. After enough evolutionary tweaks, those wings became large enough to create lift. And just like that, dinosaurs took to the skies. And that's where birds come in. Every bird today, from a pigeon to a penguin, is a descendant of a small feathered dinosaur. And I'm gonna say that again because it's so freaking cool. But every bird today, from a pigeon to a penguin, is a descendant of a small feathered dinosaur. And now finally, we get to the extinction, the survivors. 66 million years ago, a 6-mile-wide asteroid struck Earth near the Yucatan Peninsula. The impact, well, it triggered wildfires, earthquakes, and tsunamis. It ejected dust into the atmosphere, blocking sunlight, and finally it collapsed food chains and cooled the planet. The result of these effects, well, about 75% of all life went extinct, including non-avian dinosaurs. But the avian dinosaurs, for example, birds, survived. Small, warm-blooded, feathered, and able to fly, they carried on the dinosaur legacy. We come here to the end of the episode, and I will leave you with a couple of final thoughts to think about the legacy of dinosaurs. By every measure, dinosaurs were a success. They ruled for 160 plus million years. They adapted to almost every environment, evolved into thousands of species, and eventually into birds. From house-cat-sized predators to 80-ton giants, they shaped ecosystems and pushed evolution into new frontiers. And in fact, they still do in the skies above us. So while the T-Rex and Triceratops are gone, over 10,000 species of dinosaurs live on today. Pretty amazing, right? And that's it for today, folks. If you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to leave a thumbs up and follow this account so you get updates every time I upload a new episode. Until next time, stay curious.